in terms of software and software development. So stakeholders are play a much more important role in these different aspects. So let's see what are those and how and why stakeholders are like pretty much important in day-to-day application development. Okay. All right. So we have we have primary stakeholders. So as name implies, so they play a major role. So they have a direct contact with the production on the software in the use. Okay, so anyone who purchases our software, so we either sometimes we if you are selling the software for the open market, or people who will be using uh, that that are what we call primary stakeholders. So they are going to be directly involving in this system and its use. And there are users, um, and there are users primarily. So sometimes when you are purchasing software, it's not always the person who is using. Sometimes, for example, we might purchase the software for a company, but not the company owner or someone is going to be using that. Someone within the development team or someone from outside will be using that software. So that we call those things who are intent users. So anyone who is using the software, that is what we call the primary stakeholder. And the people who are developing software, we call them as the developers. So they are in a primary stakeholder position. So managers, so those are the people that are like hardware system, which software runs, the people who manage the infrastructure and all those things. So in software and software architecture pattern, why these people are very important and why do we need to talk about these people? So different perspectives, they uphold some information with regarding the software that we are developing. So for example, we sometimes as most of the time, since we are studying software development, as well as are um, we are using software day to day, will be will be identified as maybe under these primary four stakeholders, or we might be someone in some particular situation. For example, I'm developing a software and I want to distribute with the rest of the world. So I'm going to be playing a role of developer. And for all of you know that we use day-to-day applications such as, let's say, our browser. So we use our browser day to day. So in that scenario, we are users of that software. Okay. So in a scenario like this, what do we need to understand is that each of these perspective matters for us as developers. Okay, so we will be talking about the different type of stakeholders and their roles as developers. Okay, since we are in most of the time in terms of developers perspective, why other stakeholders are important and what is the main interaction point of having these kind of people around the software. So the main reason that we need to think about is there are a couple of infrastructural and couple of user experience and a couple of cost-wise. We need to think as developers all these aspects. So think as a developer, okay, as a developer, think um, what is the value of this software? Maybe it is an open source software, or maybe something that you will be developing for some money. Either way, at the end, um, uh, there should be some way of maintaining the softwares, and you need to keep doing that for even for a longer time. So, for example, you might say, okay, we normal we are as developers, we if I'm developing a software for open source use, okay, why do I need to think about monetary things? So the main reason behind that is, even though you do not want to get any monetary values, sometimes you need some help, or sometimes you need support from like buying new hardware. Okay, you can't develop software out of a keyboard, right? You need sophisticated hardware. You need sometimes you need some some utilities to be paid. So there you have to figure out how to earn money. If you're purely rich, and if you're funded by someone else, then of course you don't have to worry about this section. But most of the time, even though there are open source projects and everything, enthusiastic are there are people who are willing to donate their time. Uh, in some scenarios, we need to make sure a quality software is, needs some monetary factors to maintain. Okay, so we need to think about the purchasers who are willing to at least donate the money to our projects and this kind of thing. If it is clearly monetary, of course, you can sell the software directly to a company, or people who are interested in that kind of thing can be done. But most of the time, you need to make sure you are willing to willing to get some money in order to work. So, if you think about a perspective of, if you want to sell something, your software need to be sold. So how are you going to price it? Okay, you need to think about pricing strategies. First of all, make sure that you know what is the worth of the software, and whether it is going to be something like we're going to be marketing for everyone, or we are specifically targeting an application for certain user base. For example, let's assume we are developing an application which will be used for every one on this planet. For example, let's assume that a social media platform. Yeah, I'm about to develop a social media platform. So, as you might guess, with some age restriction, like a child not be able to like access the system, but other than that, anyone who is eligible for a computer can utilize the social media platform, right? Because it's like a humanitarian fact. You can add these things and work with that. If you are um, if you are working for such a project, but say for example you are developing a software that is for people who are traveling in buses. Okay, so you guys can see that it is narrowing down. Okay, so it should be people who need to travel and they have to use buses. Okay, so not all the people in the world would benefit from that. Okay, they won't be interested in of purchasing the software, or they might not be interested in having that in your phone or in your website. They won't need that kind of thing to work with. So in a situation like that, we'll be like purchasing power of a person is not the purchasing power of the people. We need to worry about that as well. So Not a single person in the world would like buy a software, even how much it is worth, it for like 50,000 rupees, for just to take advantage of something related to a bus fare. Okay, so there is too much of a purchasing power. So we need to make sure we need to adjust our application. We need to make sure our adjustments based on the purchasing power of the stakeholders. Okay, so we need to adjust our our application in order to match those kind of people. So I'm not like condemning or saying that people who are going on buses have less bargaining power, or they have something like that. But that is the reality. Not everybody will be spending that amount of money for any service that they provide. Okay, even I would even I personally would think twice. Okay, what is the gain of this? How can I return? The purchases, the people who are purchasing this, they should have a clear motive to get this application, and they should find very useful to use this. So when we are thinking about the purchasing power, the stakeholders, we need to monetize the application based on their requirement. Maybe couple of thousand rupees, yes, that they will find worthful for uh, some information. But we have to be very strategic about it. We don't want to overload the users by saying, okay, we need that amount of money, this amount of money, that kind of thing. So we need to make sure that our application is worth the time and effort we are putting, and the people who are buying it is actually wanting this within their system. And so think the purchasing power of the stakeholders, whether they are willing to pay and whether they will use it continuously. Sometimes, if you are finding a model that would not be sustainable, then users will leave the system, right? For example, uh, we can like monetize our application, something like subscriber base. So you pay for a month, and if you're liking it, then you can use it for upcoming months. So that's kind of subscription plan should be there. There should be a selling point for anything that users would find, okay, this is very useful at this point. So that is what we need to think about as software developers, whether the bargaining power of the application and the people who are willing to buy is going to be working in this application as they intended. Okay. Um, uh, Other than that, we would like we would like uh, to see in the perspective of users. Okay, so there are people who will be using our application. We need to think about those people as well. For example, um, this is not something from the monetary side. Monetary side, yes, we have the purchasing and purchasing, but how the users gonna be using the software? The people who will be using the software, uh, what is the experience that they will go? Okay, so for example, uh, we need to make sure uh, we need to understand that the users, what are the users' expectation and what kind of situation they are in. For example, that's a separate subject most of us now practice. There is what we call user interface as well as user experience, UI, UX. So that is a completely new, not new per se, but completely something uh, something that we normally practice these days in order to make sure that the application is, widely used by users. So another thing that we need to think, the user base, the people who are using this application, are they in full capabilities? For example, not every human who is out there is equally capable. Okay, there are people who are differently able. Okay, some might have good hearing, some might have bad vision, some might have bad hearing, and there are like a lot of people with different abilities. Okay, so we need to make sure if you are developing such a software, all the other people who are using this, they have the I'm not saying the best experience, but at least experience that they can get out of the software as much as possible. For example, let's assume that there are people uh, who have difficulties while seeing things. Okay, so to uh, to cater the people who have difficulties, what we need to do is we need to make sure our software is handling accessibility options. Say, for example, there are options where there are screen readers, right? Where when you click or when you tap on it, it will like explain the things that you are trying to do, and they can manage on that. And there are sometimes people who with low vision. Maybe we need to make sure the font size, while we are increasing the font size, the application does not break. At least it will show the correct UI as we wanted. So that's kind of things we need to keep in mind in order when we are working with applications that we are creating. Okay, so we need to know the user base, who are the people that going to be using the application, and when we are making the application that is accessible by everyone, that is um, that is using the software, have the equal accessibility to our software. So those things should be kept in mind. So that's why we need to talk about users in general, like because of the user base. If we develop something and the users, not everybody can use that, then there will be a little bit of a trouble that maybe it does not make sense to develop the software at all. Okay, so even though you might think, okay, we do not want to think about different type of people, make sure at least incorporate their uh, their existence. That means we might not need to incorporate from like day zero, but at least when you are developing the application, we need to make sure that um, there are different type of users. We need to cater all of those users in order to software to work. Okay, so that is something that we should keep in mind when we are developing softwares for the user base that we are trying to get. Okay, so developers perspective. So I am a stakeholder, I am a developer, and from a developer's perspective, how do I look at another developer? Okay, so this is something that we should think oftenly, as I mentioned, not you will in a professional software, in a software that we will be using, you won't be the only one who is going to be developing a software. Okay, there will be most of the time there will be a team who is developing the application. In that scenario, we should think about the team who is doing the coding or who is maintaining the software. So we need to make sure that everything that we do within the software, other developers are not in trouble. Okay, how do we make that kind of commitment? How do we make sure that kind of thing is not happening? Well, basically, there are practices we should do in order to make sure another developer's experience, another developer's life is not put in here. So what are those practices that we need to do in order to make sure these things are in order, or these things are not making anyone's life miserable? So the first thing that I have seen is uh, standard coding. Okay, we need to practice the standard coding practices. Otherwise, what will happen is uh, we will add codes based on our knowledge. Sometimes we will add code which are like not standard. For example, there are naming conventions that we should use when we are declaring a variable. There is a naming pattern that we follow. If we are following if you're following something like uh, class naming, we should follow the class naming as. So different organization might have different practices on this, but most of the time, most of the time people will get a documentation saying, okay, this is how we gonna do documentation, this is how we're gonna do naming. So we need to respect that, or we need to like make sure that we do not do against those specification. So make sure we follow the rules that is provided by the application development team. So that is one thing that we can make development for another developer easy. The other thing that we need to think is, of course, not everybody can understand some functionalities by simply looking at the code itself. They need some documentation help. There are like use cases where the logic is, it seems to be um, simple. As a developer, if you are the developer, you might find, okay, this is a simple logic, anyone can read the code and understand. But remember, that is not always the case. Sometimes we might find some use cases, some logics that is, yes, for you, since you are familiar with the code, since you have done with the software and everything, you might find, okay, this is easy, anyone can understand this by looking at it. That is not going to be the case for everyone. So make sure when you are making code, and if you find as a good practice, always document your code. Okay, so as a fellow developer, if somebody comes in and search about it, they will understand, okay, this is the summary of this code. Anyone who is coming there will understand what is going on there. So that's kind of a best practice that we need to do. So make sure you document your code, so anyone else who is coming have the um, have the courtesy or have the idea of what we are talking in this application. Okay, so that is something we should do as developers. Make sure the documentation is up to date. So even with uh, smaller things, okay, it will be really helpful to someone else to understand the code that we want to express. Okay, other things, what we can do as uh, developers in terms of uh, software initialization. So first thing, as I mentioned, we should have coding standards, then we should have documentation. And the next thing that we should probably do as developers is knowledge sharing. Okay, so always find yourself to give your colleagues, give your uh, uh, give your uh, what do you say, co-workers the best experience that they can get by doing some knowledge transfer sessions. Okay, so if you can give the information with regarding a certain technology that you have found, they might find useful in upcoming future, or they might be find that is useful when we are thinking in terms of next project. Okay, so for example, um, recently I have found article saying something about technology called TRPC. Okay, so TRPC is a software concept that help us to communicate with the REST APIs that we are usually do in a more type safe manner. Okay, so uh, even though I learned it as a best practice, you don't you should share it the friends or any colleagues that you find out. Okay, I have found uh, I have found the uh, I have found this new technology called TRPC. It will make our life easy. Okay, so other things that I have found recently is automated test recorders. Okay, so it's kind of like when we are, you guys know, when we are doing manual test, we usually do one sort of test and we are done with that. Again, if we want to test, we need to uh, take the same test once again. Okay, we say, for example, I want to log in, and I would do some actions in my system, and I will log out. Okay, so this is like a test case um, that we are following. So these recorders, what they will do is it will eliminate the human factor, and we can automate the recording process. They will observe what we have done, and next time when you are running end-to-end test or some kind of testing, they will do it for us. We don't have to worry about getting everything in place. So that's kind of things are there that we can use, and that we can make sure that it is working as expected. So when you find such a thing, of course, always try to share with the others, so they might benefit it from it. Or one other good thing that will come, if they have used it and they have managed to master it, then you can learn from them. Okay, I personally have found such scenarios. um, I was recommending some mobile development frameworks for other people, and after few months, they have become the master of it. Okay, that kind of things happen. And the plus side is, from their perspective or my perspective, is that I can't learn that framework for like all the day, all the time. Since the other person who I have recommended master it, I can ask any question from him without an issue. Okay, so that kind of solution, that kind of win-win situations are going to be there when we share our things with the other fellow developers. Okay, so make sure you guys do the same if you find in a situation where it will benefit you as well as the others. Okay, other things what that we need to do is always try to um, make sure that the fellow developers are in need, help them as much as you want to. Okay, so for example, it's not like doing their work. No, that's not what I mean. as long as they are like, sometimes, we get stuck on some situation where there are like occasions where we all feel troubled, right? Sometimes we do not get uh, support from the internet. Sometimes we would find information missing. So in a scenario like that, always try to help your friend so they won't be in trouble. And believe me, helping others would uh, would be something that you should find yourself very pleasing. That the main reason behind that is when you find yourself, okay, I helped this person. Of course, it will be something like satisfactory. You will get the um, satisfaction of helping others, as well as if most of the time, remember, good things happen to good people, so you will be rewarded or you will be helped if you come across something similar in future. Okay, so don't think about the reward itself, just do it as a courtesy for the fellow developers. Okay, so these are like there are like thousands of things that we can talk about the developer to developer perspective, but these are the main most things that you will find in scenarios like this. Okay, then we need to think in the perspective of managers. Most of the time when you're developing softwares, we need to make sure that the software that we are trying to run is intended hardware or software. They are capable of running those things without an issue. So for example, if we develop a software for, let's say, a machine with 8 GB of RAM, we need to make sure we are not wasting that, or we are not doing some unwanted stuff that would break the system. Okay, so we need to make sure that everything that we do is not uh, exceeding the requirement, not to harm or damage any softwares that the hardware that we are using. Make sure those things run smoothly without an issue. So that's kind of things you should think about a managerial perspective um, when we are developing applications. Okay, and in terms of application development, you should always think about the safety of the systems. So you don't want to overload the systems. Okay, sometimes we developed softwares unintentionally, it is overloading the systems. Okay, sometimes a never-ending loop, sometimes a memory leak. So we have to make sure that the people who are managing software won't be in trouble because of the mistakes that we have done in our coding. So make sure that is there in our application development. Okay, so we have other things like we talked about the primary stakeholders. Okay, so these are like directly involved in our application and application usage. So there are other people who we think that will benefit of our application. Those are what we call secondary uh, stakeholders. So so there are people who are like directly affected, but there are like people who are not um, not using these things directly. So in here, the example, bank customers. Okay, so the bank, the people who are visiting the bank, who like to buy, who like to withdraw money, they are not using the system directly, the banking system. They are not They are not, most of the time, they are not allowed to interact with the things, such as they can't, check the balance of another account unless it is yours. That kind of things are not allowed, but uh, most of the time, the account management, the fund transferring, all those things will be happening within the application. So anyone who is using um, the uh, the application indirectly, we can think about people who are indirectly secondary stakeholders. So make sure uh, people who are not actively interacting with the system are the only ones, but there are secondary ones. So same goes to other people as well. Um, other as well, like for example, um, anyone who is using a service, but they are not allowed to interact directly, we can consider those things as secondary stakeholders. Okay, so there will be secondary stakeholders in any application, anything that uh, we will be looking at. So make sure we have the opportunity to work the people who are interacting with these have the same not the same level as a primary one, but they have some stake on our software. So make sure how to identify primary and secondary stakeholders, how they are affected, and what is their role within a system. So make sure you guys understand the two different type of stakeholders. So the main reason we think about these things is like the primary and secondary users. They have so many things um, in the application development, and we need to think about all the things that will affect the quality of our software. So make sure you are not the only one who is using a system. Okay, so the systems should be developed to be used by any other out there, in order to make sure the quality is there, the software is working as intended. Please think about all of these stakeholders. Okay, do not rush into developing software just like, okay, let's get it done by this and that. Okay, we will choose NT architecture, MVC architecture, whatever you're doing. But remember, there are things that we need to think even before we do other things, such as what we have talked in here. So make sure you guys do a good research on the people that who will be using this, and that is done a good research on that, and they will be working as expected. Okay. All right. Any questions up from the stakeholders uh, within an application? Anything that you guys need to clarify? Okay. Let me stop sharing. All right. Let me stop recording. Let's just stop recording. Okay.